So the new camera system is pretty straightforward. Well, it's not even really that new. Go to the cameras. So same thing. Uh, Camera settings is what I renamed camera volumes to because now it's basically just the settings themselves. Still all works the same way. You still place the camera where you want the angle to be relative to that mark because that defines like its distance from the player because that mark is standing for the player, and you still set the tracking options here exactly the same. So if I want it to not look at but just track this direction, same deal. All that's unchanged. What has changed is now there's no trigger box. We have a cam limits box, which we can still turn on. So that one, if you click use tracking limits under setup, that makes that visible and starts using it. And that's like, if I want to have the entire area, but not have it, like have the camera stop here so that you can never see like past the edge. That's what that's for. By default, it's turned off and everything will just keep whatever camera settings are when you move past the edge of the volume. The hide objects box, same deal. Turns that on. Right there, that little guy. So basically, whatever this is overlapping, when you enter into the camera volume, it will hide whatever's in there. Good for certain situations where you like need to hide a large wall or something. But in practice, I've found it maybe not easier, but more controllable to use a secondary option I set up. So this is by default off, which is specific objects to hide. So basically, this one, you just add a bunch of things and you can select them directly in the level, which that's a good point to point out here. So since this is set up just like a streaming level, when you have multiple levels, you have the persistent level, and then what other parts are in there. Like that's the combat map over there. And this one is the testing room right here. But like all the rest of this, if I click on that, it says selected actor is in the testing map persistent. Right? So this is also in the persistent level, but for some reason, whenever you try to select something, right now it's trying to select the testing room. And you can see how it didn't select it. Won't let me click on like that wall, or like this camera box trigger. Since this camera box trigger is in testing map persistent, it lets me select that. So whenever we're setting up these cameras to hide specific areas, the things that you want to hide have to be in the same level as the camera. I ran into that issue a few times when I was trying to like set up a section where like I wanted to hide a wall for one of their rooms, which I can show you real quick. I needed to make sure that that wall was in the correct level, or that the camera itself was in the correct level, which can be a little bit counterintuitive sometimes. Come on. Okay. So yeah, like if I come over here, right? That's the marker for the camera. The camera is in Jayla's room. If I wanted to have a wall here that was then hidden, I would need to make sure that wall was in Jayla's room. Same deal over here. These pieces of the wall are in Laura's room because the camera is also in Laura's room. So if these pieces of wall were set to the ground floor, for example, which is like the main structure of the whole building, then I wouldn't be able to select them to hide them. So one thing I learned is that if you select a bunch of things and then you hit Control M, it will put those objects into the map that you currently have selected as your active map. So like if I come over here, say this wall, right? These actors are on second floor left, right? So if I come over here and I select Cozy Den ground floor, now that is selected as the active one, and it says my selected actor is in second floor left. I hit Control M, and now that object has been moved to ground floor. I want it in second floor left, so I'll double click that, or right click and make current, or just hit enter, and then do the same thing. Now it's in second floor left. So that's the important part there, because if I hide second floor left, that's all gone. Which, like, a good example, this is in Jeeves' room. It should be. I have Jeeves' room shown. So if I hide Jeeves' room, all of Jeeves' rooms goes away. Same deal, second floor right. Everything that should be on the second floor right disappears. And anything that's not, what I can do is like, let's do that second floor left thing again. So like, let's say I had grabbed these and made them part of ground floor. Then I want to make sure I've got everything that needs to be in second floor left in that map. I can hide it and be like, oh, you guys are supposed to be in there. Well, I'll double click you. I'm working on you, but I still want it hidden. All right. So now anything I Control M gets added to it, and since it's currently hidden, it disappears. For example, this guy. This guy should be in second floor M, or second floor left. So I'm Control M, and now he's gone. Now back to our save all. Back to the cameras. Right, testing now. So once we've got a camera in place, this volume is what now? Trigger camera box. Okay, so this is one of the trigger camera boxes. I'll delete it. Yep. Okay, so we've got our camera. We've got our settings, but nothing's going to trigger that at current. It can be triggered by an actual trigger object now. So like if I come in here and go to interactive objects, and I guess puzzle elements, not those are, want basically like an overlap volume. So base class, yeah, just trigger base. So if I grab a trigger base and plug it in there, I can tell it that its target activator is the camera. And now when this is interacted with, as long as conditions are met and stuff, it would trigger that camera. So basically this allows us to have like a lever on the wall that when we activate, it triggers a camera and like shows us something over here, whatever it did. And then at the end of that trigger, we can have it go back to the previous camera or remove the camera setting that was the one for over here viewing it, and we go back to our previous one. But the main part is that in our level setup blueprints, our cameras, we got our trigger camera box. This is the default one that I'm using for all the cameras. And what it lets us do is now, rather than having to click in here, scroll down, find the overlap volume, and then adjust that. Now that this is a separate thing, we can place it any way we want. We can rotate it, we can rescale it without having to do anything fancy. All we need to do is say, it triggers that camera. And now it's all set. So I can take this and I can put its rotation back and I can scale it up, bring it over here. The fun part is, now, if I want to have it to where this camera also triggers when you're like right over here, I can just duplicate it. It keeps that camera setting. I can resize it as needed. Now I have an irregular shape that all triggers that camera. So this allows us to do stuff around certain corners, which is what I really needed when I was setting up the stairway for the Cozy Den area. So it's that extra step of now you just got to drag in the trigger box and select the camera. But that lets us do a lot more flexible things with the camera volumes rather than just having one. I had tried to set up a system where there was secondary overlaps that you could have the camera itself spawn and then place, and it was just more hassle than it was worth and caused bugs, because when you'd stop overlapping with one of them, it would try to trigger the overlap end even though you were still overlapping with other parts. The way these ones work is that when you stop overlapping with this one, say you're coming back this way, you stopped overlapping with that one, it triggers the camera to say, okay, I've stopped overlapping with the trigger box. Do I need to remove that camera setting? And it will check all other camera volume, or the volume boxes that are associated with that camera. And if you're still overlapping with any of those, it won't change anything. Only when you stop overlapping with all of the ones associated with the camera will it say, okay, go ahead and remove that camera setting unless it's the last one in your queue. So that is how they now work, which means I'll be going through and re-adding the trigger camera boxes to the cameras and trying to fix everything that got broken by me updating this with new functions. But overall, that should fix a lot of problems we have.